I'm Marcy Barron, and this is Mondays with Marcy. I'm your homeward bound guide to everything 5D living. I can't wait to share with you tips and tools to guide your personal transformation so that you can live a life that thrills you. Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of Mondays with Marcy. Today, we are going to be talking about past lives and soul fragments. So this is a topic that I have been fascinated with for many, 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 many years. When I was in college, I read Dr. Brian Weiss's book, Many Lives, Many Masters. And I was just like, whoa. I always knew as a girl growing up in a secular Jewish home, my mom always talked about the soul. She always spoke about how the soul never dies. And I guess that's what religions have always spoken about, like the essence of who you are when we go. Where does that go? What happens? So when I read this book, Many Lives, Many Masters, it literally changed and shifted so much of what I didn't even know. It just was like this whole awakening for me, right? So if you haven't read the book, Many Lives, Many Masters, I recommend that you do it. I spent 5 days with Dr. Brian Weiss, who is the preeminent authority, if you will, expert on past lives. And I trained with him at the Omega Institute, upstate New York, to be a past life regression therapist. So if you're interested in past life regression therapy, please reach out to me via my website, marcybaronclears.com, and book a session with me, and we can do a past life regression. Because what this is life-changing stuff. So if you haven't listened to the podcast before this one, number 6, I spoke about your soul's plan. I spoke about your soul contract. I spoke about the lessons of your soul, of why you're here. And we did a little exercise to figure that out. And if you haven't listened to it, go back and listen to it after this one. And intentionally, I did that in this order. What is fascinating is we come in to plan the lessons of our soul, but it comes from based on our past lives and what it is that we didn't learn. So in those lives. So imagine, if you will, you get to the end of the journey in a life, and you then are in the pre-planning committee with your souls and your guides and your soul group, and you're like, all right, well, I didn't learn the lesson of forgiveness. I didn't learn the lesson of unconditional love. So you come in to set up your individualized curriculum in this life with challenges and with people who will help support you in now learning about unconditional love and forgiveness. And here's the thing that I want to say. It is our most difficult relationships. It is our most difficult people that we have seemingly the most friction with and problems, in quotes, with, that really are our most deepest soul connections. Because they are here to help us learn what it is that we want to learn. So that could be something that's helpful for you. It's like, oh, wow, I didn't realize that this relationship could help me grow into the most aligned version of myself. And, you know, for me, that's a relationship with my dad. It was never easy. It hasn't been easy, even in most recent years, but I have come to resolution that he is helping me realize what I set out here to do. So there's so much love and gratitude and forgiveness around all that, quote, has happened, and it's perfect for me. And it is something that, again, takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of work. It can't, sometimes you just can't go like, oh, I'm good with that. It's like, there's a lot of pain and a lot of grief and a lot of sadness, and that's okay. But for me, and a big piece of my lesson is it's safe to be seen and heard, is in direct result of healing that wound, in healing and coming into reconciliation around not being seen and heard. And that's okay. And I'm grateful for it. So for me to have set that up in my soul planning committee for the curriculum of this life, I had to have had many lives, which I have come in contact with, where I wasn't seen and heard, where I was not in sovereignty, not in full alignment of my authenticity. And I have connected with so many lives of that. And it was this one that I was like, all right, I got it. I understood. There's this like TikTok thing. I understood the assignment. If you know what I'm talking about, you get it. But it's like there's a task that we're here to, or I would say a lesson to fulfill, not a task, a lesson. And so how do we access those past lives? How do we get in touch with those other lives in our past, even future ones? I've been able to access this. So again, I trained with Dr. Brian Weiss, and we go through a hypnosis where we are able to be our multidimensional selves. We're able to access any time on the timeline. And when I went through this training, it was unbelievable what I was able to access, and holding space for, I want to say, like several hundreds of clients. I've done groups. You can even check my website. I might be having a workshop on a past life workshop in a group setting. If that's something you want to do, just check my website. But the individual ones too, it's like, whoa, what we're able to access, what we're able to connect to is parts of ourselves that are not in this present lifetime, but our multidimensional selves. I was even able to have a past life regression with a woman recently, and she was able to connect with her galactic self. It wasn't even a human being. She was able to connect with an aspect of her that is like galactic from another star system. And again, that may be like, what the heck are you talking about? But again, if we are energy, and energy cannot be created or destroyed, there are parts of us that might have incarnated on Earth, and there are parts of us that might have gone into other parts of the universe to have experiences, to learn the lessons of our soul. So Dr. Brian Weiss, I want to tell you a little bit about his story, and he talks about it in this book. Big scientific mind, big medical, like scientific method guy that truly was all about, and I laugh because of the quotes, science of like what's come up in the world here. And this is the thing about science, guys. It can always be more information, and new things can always be shown. And he was a big skeptic. He is a what is it, an Ivy League trained undergraduate of medical school, and then he of undergraduate, and then he went to an Ivy League medical school, and he became the head psychiatrist, the head of psychiatry at a hospital in Miami. And you can Google his name, you can look up his credentials, and he was doing what he did and what he learned to do in medical school, which was give people medicine. And this is in the early 80s, give people medicine and medicate them. And at the same time, give them therapy to help them shift. And again, most common what therapists see are, anxiety and fear and all the things. And a woman came into his practice named Catherine, and she had so many fears and so many phobias. And he couldn't give her any medicine because she had this terrible fear of choking. So he knew that a method that could help her clear the fear was a regression. And very often early in life, we have these traumas and everything is stored. The issues are in the tissues. Everything gets stored in the body and in the subconscious mind. And he's like, maybe she choked on a grape. Maybe she had some sort of choking experience when she was a very young girl and she didn't remember it. So he regressed her to an earlier time in her life as Catherine. And she came up with maybe something that cleared the fear of choking a little bit. So he's like, normally when you get the sweet spot, when you're able to access the trauma, it clears it. So he says, maybe she was younger, she has no conscious memory. He says to her in the regression, when was the first time you remember choking? And she went into a complete account of a past life in Egypt where she was able to explain in incredible detail everything that happened with insane accounts and details and all of the things where he was just like, what is going on here? And what happened is she had drowned. She had drowned in a flood, I guess a flooding of the Nile, and her and her baby were taken away and she drowned. And so he was like, what the heck is this? I don't even believe this is happening. But the crazy thing is then her fear of choking went away. And instead of medicating her, he, in true scientific mode, he did research. There wasn't any research on this. He found some information about near-death experiences where people are then able to tap into source energy, the oneness, all that is, but nothing about going into another lifetime. And he's like, I'm not medicating her. I want to keep going further around this. So what did he do? He kept using that key word, the first time. And in this book, he explains how she was able to recount all of these past lives where all of this trauma was. She was able to access it, and then she experienced incredible healing. So he just then started recording these and documenting them and speaking about it with his wife, Carol, who I met on my training. And as he was doing these regressions with her, all of the recurring nightmares, all of the anxiety attacks, all of the things that started to clear for her, and her vibration raised, and she became more magnetic and happier and more of, quote, herself. So he had a lot of skepticism, again, because of his scientific mind. But what happened was, when he was regressing her, there were these messages, these spaces between lives, which contained remarkable revelations for Dr. Weiss that nobody could have known. She started channeling the masters, and that's why this book is called Many Lives, Many Masters. She started talking about Dr. Weiss's family, and in particular, his dead son. She started channeling information that nobody could have known. There was no such thing as Google back then. She channeled his father's, Dr. Weiss's father's Hebrew name, which was Avram. She channeled the masters to come through about his son who died as an infant, and she described that he had a chicken heart, which was an inversion, a backwards of the heart that literally was a congenital defect that nobody knew about. And he was like, wow, how does she know this? And if you go back to my last podcast, I spoke about my son coming through a medium. My son saying things that literally opened me up to this journey of the soul. So he then started doing this with patients, and then, became rejected by his peer group of traditionally trained physicians. Because again, a lot of people doubt this. A lot of people don't understand this concept, and that's okay. Everybody is where they are. My hope is this is reaching you at the perfect time through what you need to hear, right? And that's what happens. Information comes when it's meant to. So he wrote many books, and I recommend all of his books. And the training with him for 5 days literally changed the trajectory of my life, getting a lot of insight into my past lives, my soul's plan, and what I'm here to do as an individual and as a person who holds space for people's healing. And past life regression therapy is really cool because you get to explore other places on your timeline before this incarnation to understand your traumas, your fears, your anxieties, and why you came into this life to clear the things that you needed to clear. And again, I'm going to say it again. You can never run out of time, and you can never get it wrong. You just get to learn it in a different form. And what Dr. Weiss spoke about is we get to learn these things through all different lenses. So we've all been men, we've all been women, we've all been different races, we've been rich, we've been poor, we've lived in all different parts of the world. And that's a really interesting concept. One huge thing that triggered my awakening, when I went to Israel in 2012, and I remember driving in the bus. I was with a huge group of women on what they call the mommy birthright, as Jewish women to go and connect to our Jewish heritage. And I used to sit on the bus, and we would drive through the Judean desert by the Dead Sea, and I would look out the window, and I was like, I have been here before. There was something in my being that knew I had been there before. And I was searching the landscape, and I was looking at these Bedouin little oases where people would live and all that. I was like, oh my goodness. And when I came back from Israel, I was so out of sorts. I had a huge awakening in Israel. Like literally my crown blew open. Uh, I I just felt so connected to the oneness of all that is. But I wasn't grounded. I was so uncomfortable in my body. And that was a big part when I sought out, who eventually became someone I worked with for 2 years straight, every Friday, to accelerate and clear and understand, a lot of and process a lot of my trauma and a lot of healing. And eventually she became my mentor, and I did a bunch of trainings with her and literally stepped into my soul's purpose here as an energy healer, as an intuitive healer here on earth. And what I found in a past life regression with her was I had a very significant life that happened in Israel. And I knew it. It was like my soul knew it. And what happened when I was in Israel was I kept coughing. I had an energetic cough for 10 years. I couldn't get rid of it. This was my spiritual flu, right? It wasn't reflux. It wasn't a cold. It wasn't anything with my lungs. I had gone to all sorts of doctors to figure out what the root of my cough was. And it wasn't anything related to any physical symptoms. And it got really kicked up in Israel. And my roommate said to me one night, she was like, "Do you realize you cough all night in your sleep?" And I was like, "What? Oh my God." And when I came back and did this work with this woman, I had a past life where I was literally suffocated with a pillow in Israel. And so why was my cough like acted up? It was like I was so close to that place where I had that trauma, and there was a soul fragment there. So what is a soul fragment? A soul fragment is a piece of your energy that literally breaks off so that your spirit, your soul, does not completely absorb the trauma and the shock of the trauma. So what was crazy was, as I was in physical proximity to this soul fragment, because it was traumatic, right, to be smothered by a pillow, we retrieved that soul fragment, sent it to my higher self, and in the coming, days and weeks, that aspect was able to be returned to my vessel, to my body, to the essence of my soul, my spirit, and the cough went away. After 10 years of struggling with this cough, of it reaching epic proportion and annoying my roommate in Israel. And then when I came home, I was like, I'm out of sorts here, and really literally peeling back the onion of my own trauma. And again, I speak about this, not being seen and heard, choking on my words, having the inability to feel comfortable being seen and heard, for many lifetimes. So it's life-changing stuff. And the soul fragment and the retrieval of the soul fragment is a shamanic practice. But I was downloaded a methodology, if you will, shown a methodology in a different way that helps me. I work with the angelic realm to do it. So again, if this is something that you want to explore, please go to my website, marcybaronclears.com. You can book a 15-minute consultation call with me that's free. You can just buy a session and then I'll email you and you can tell me you're interested in a past life regression. There are also things in this timeline where we have soul fragments, and I just did a session yesterday. The interest was in past life regression, but we needed to heal the trauma in this life first, and we retrieved two soul fragments in this lifetime. So it's fascinating stuff. It's life-changing stuff. It, again, fits into our individualized souls curriculum. And when we are able to access it, when we're able to understand that this is what happened to us for us to grow, we then can shift out of that victim mentality into feeling empowered. And I am hosting workshops, group workshops, if that's something you're interested in too. So check my events page as an online offering. So I hope you found that interesting. I find it so juicy. I find it so incredible. And check out Dr. Weiss's books. And if there's anything I can support you in healing your past lives, please reach out to me, as I love holding space for these kinds of sessions. I love holding space for all of them. And thank you for being here. I'm so grateful you are. Have a beautiful day. That's it for this week's episode of Mondays with Marcy. Be sure to subscribe to my newsletter at marcybaronclears.com. I also would love for you to follow me on your favorite podcasting app so that you don't miss a single episode. I'm Marcy Baron, and thanks for listening. I am so grateful you are here.